Hello my loves, welcome back to my channel. Today I am doing another palette review and demos. So today I've got the new Glaminatrix Cosmetics Timeless Tones. Miss Frey has come for a little visit. What are you doing, Miss Frey? You want to be on the camera? Yes, she does. She wants her to say hello everyone. You're just gonna stay up there? You feel quite comfy. Or you're done? You done? You got it out your system? Yeah. It's a routine. It is what it is. So, Timeless Tones palette. This has a very like blue willow vibe to it. If you're familiar with like the China pattern, that's what this is giving off, and I quite like it. It makes me think of my nana. So this is a 20 pan eyeshadow palette. It is available now. It's retailing for 95 Australian dollars, and it has a combination of mattes. There's some like, you know, sparkly iridescent shades here that have like a nice sort of shift to them. There's some shifty shades over here too. These ones here are a bit more like sheer and sparkly. These ones over on this side are like more intense with their color, like they have a color base basically. As you can see, this is a very cool toned palette. We do have a bunch of browns. Some of these might look a little bit on the warmer side, but they're really not. They do lean quite cool toned. We've got a classic matte black down here, and then for color we've got some really classic green shades and some more blue shades as well. So I did end up using all of the eyeshadows in this palette, and I did 4 looks in total, and I structured them using each line of the palette and then using the different colors in the lines in the exact same positioning in each look. So I'm going to take you through the looks, let you know how I position things, how I went with the different shades, and I'm also going to have a little chat about their new 8-piece brush set at the end of the video. I am using these brushes in all of the looks. There were some slight exceptions, so I will mention that when I get to them, but we'll have a chat about my thoughts on these brushes after we get through the demos. So for look number 1, I used the shade Lady in the crease. This is a really nice like pinky skin tone cool shade. I quite like this. It is very subtle, at least on me, but if you do want sort of more intensity of color, you can build it up, and this gives a little bit of like a natural looking shadow in the socket, which I quite liked. On the outer corner, I went with Sophisticated. So this is just a cool mid-toned brown, nice and easy to work with, blends really well. On the inner corner, I went with Classy. So the inner corner is where I used these sort of iridescent shades. This one, you will be seeing like a pinky purple-ish, but on my angle I also see a green. So this is a duochrome. It's got, you know, a bit of shift to it, which is really pretty. And then we have Dignified over the center of the eyelid. This is a beautiful shade. I am also wearing this on like the majority of my eyelids today. So this is a really beautiful like dusty mauvey purpley shade, really pretty. It's not a duochrome, it just has that really beautiful like silvery reflect. I will say with this one, I get some fallout, and I think that is simply because of that like silvery sparkle that it has in it. So I would keep that in mind. If you're going into this palette for the first time, you're going in blind, like do your eyeshadow before you do your base. I will also mention with these iridescent and especially the sparkly shades, you can kind of go one of 2 ways with how you apply it and the finish that you end up with. So if you're going for something that's a bit more sparkly and twinkly, like dry brush and not picking up too much product and sort of, you know, patting it on, I think that does end up in a little bit more fallout, specifically again with these like sparkly shades. but you get more of a twinkle. If you wanted like this intense like metallic reflect and intensity of like the base color, I would say apply it with like a silicone applicator or a sponge applicator, your finger, a damp brush, something like that. Now, I actually really like that the formulas aren't sort of locking you in to one specific finish. I think we're very used to seeing, you know, these sort of metallic sparkly shades. They often have emollients in them that make them like adhere to the eye and go on almost kind of creamy-ish. And that's great for the fact that often you don't get as much fallout, if any, but also it locks you into like a specific look, which is just like intense, like color payoff and, you know, this sort of like one finish from your particular eyeshadow. But when they're a little bit more flexible with their formula and they don't have as many like emollient ingredients in them, I feel like you can play around and get different effects with the eyeshadows. Finally, to finish the look, I had to use Tasteful. Now, with all of these darker eyeshadows, I use them as liners because it can be quite difficult getting 5 different eyeshadows on your eye and making them all distinct enough to see. Especially, I've got little eyes. I mean, I can start putting eyeshadow up here, but it's gonna look a little bit crazy. This one I used as an eyeliner. Beautiful shade, love it. Now, I did try to apply this with the EO6 angled liner brush from their brush range, but for me, it was just a little bit too wide. I think that would be better used for like gel liners or even brow products. Or you could dampen the brush and then pick up the matte eyeshadow to sort of compact the bristles a little bit. Don't get me wrong, the brush is totally usable as a liner brush and I did do it, but as I went on with the following looks, I opted to use a skinnier brush simply because I find it a little bit easier. I did finish the look with, you know, all of the eye look trimmings and I put Lady and Sophisticated on the lower lash line, did a little touch up on Classy on the inner corner, which you might see me do with some of the looks that are coming up. Overall, I really liked this look. For look number 2, I used the green shades in the palette. So I started out with Glamour. So this is a like minty, almost pastel-y kind of green shade. I would say it's very classic. It gives me 80s vibes, potentially even like 60s and 70s vibes, to be honest. This shade went on really smoothly. I expected to have to build it quite a bit to get like the color payoff from it, but it was really quite good, to be fair. On my outer corner, I used the shade Classic. So this is, you know, sort of a mid-tone foresty green shade. Very pretty. Also went on really smoothly. It blends beautifully. It's very pigmented. I'm just gonna put it out there. Start small. Unless you're going for like a super intense green look, like just use a little bit. Use a little bit and build it up. On my inner corner, I used the shade Effortless. This is a very pretty shade. So it looks a bit green there, sorry, gold there, but there is green and also I feel like some like turquoisey and blue shades. You guys are just getting like a yellowy gold, but there's a lot more to it than that. Oh, you might be able to get a little bit there. It's kind of hard to show you, but there is like, you know, light blue, some like greeny hints. It looks a little bit turquoisey and there might even be like a tiny hint of purple in there. It's a beautiful shade. I really like that one. And this is one of my favorite shades in the palette. This is Everlasting. So this is like a blue-brown pigment. It is kind of like a fuchsia purple on the angle. Super pretty. Again, I feel like the finger swatch shows it being quite intense with its coloring, but the formula, you can have like a soft wash of color with this and get more twinkle out of it if you want to. This sort of color has been around for decades. It has been popular for decades, and that's because it is like, it's super flattering and it's pretty and it's duochrome and it does, you know, lovely things on the skin. And finally, for the liner, I used the shade Vintage. This is a very dark green. So again, this has that like dark foresty vibe to it. It's really, really pretty. I definitely think it's one of those like classic sort of green shades. Definitely dark enough to use as a liner. And if you are somebody who likes to do, you know, smoky eyes, going into those like darker colors, like if you're comfortable doing a black smoky eye, you could use this kind of shade to create like a foresty green smoky eye. Just mwah. On the lower lash line, I used Glamour and Classic. I did do a little inner corner touch up as well on this one. Overall, I think all of the eyeshadows in this look work really well. Like they blend and apply beautifully. I'm not a huge fan of greens on my eyes, as you guys know, so this wasn't my favorite look, but everything here applied beautifully. Look number 3. So this is the Blue Row. I started with the shade Polished. This is kind of like a cool toned, like taupey camel-y shade. It's got more grey undertones though, and I think it's a really interesting shade. Great for creating a shadow, like if you're trying to put shadow back where you've like completely blanked out your eye. It does go on very light, so you can like build up the intensity of how much you want out of it. Then I went in with Elegant on the outer corner. This is like classic 70s blue. Also, probably you would have seen it in like the 60s and the 80s as well. But if you really wanted like a classic blue, like this is it. And it's a beautiful formula as well. It's got really good pigmentation. It blended really easily. On the inner corner, I went with the shade Expensive. So this is really pretty. You guys are seeing like a bluish, tiny hint of purple in there. But on my angle here, it's a really pretty pink shade. So again, you've got that. Oh, there you go. You can catch both there. Really pretty, like, you know, iridescent, color shifty shade with not really a base color. The color is coming from that reflect. And then on the, like over the lid, I applied this one here, which is Exquisite. And again, you're seeing that sort of slightly tealish blue. It almost makes this one look purple. But on this angle, it's more of like a bright fuchsia pink. Again, maybe I can, there you go. You can see the color shift in it there. Really pretty shade. This one doesn't have as much base color as Dignified and Everlasting, which I swatched in the previous looks, but it's still very pretty. This is more like a little bit more sheer with its base color, and more of its color comes out with the like sparkly pigment. I will mention that these blue and green shades do stain a little bit, but what I would find is at the end of the day when I washed my makeup off, if I had some staining, it was typically gone by the next day. So it's not like you're going to be stuck walking around with like blue and green staining on your eyes. It's just, I would say wear a primer, you know, wear something to sort of put a barrier between your skin and the color. I think most people do that anyway because it helps for the eyeshadows to adhere. But also in saying that, if you do experience staining, I wouldn't worry too much because in my experience, it never was like hanging around for too long. For the liner, I used the shade Suave. This is an absolutely amazing, intensely pigmented blackened blue. It is, the pigmentation is like next level and it works beautifully as an eyeliner. But again, like if you're into smoky eyes, dark smoky eyes, you can do really fun things with the darkest blue and green in this palette. To finish this look, I used Polished and Elegant along my lower lash line, and of course all of the trimmings to sort of finish off an eye look. Again, I liked the formula of these. I think like objectively they all apply really nicely. They've got great pigmentation, they blend really well, they're not patchy, all of that jazz. But as I mentioned, not a huge fan of greens and blues, so not like my all-time favorite looks, not something that I'd really be reaching for on like a regular basis. Suave as a liner, like you could 100% convince me to use that again in the future. And I mean the shimmery shades, like the, you know, duochromes or the iridescence and these sort of sparkly shades, like you don't have to twist my arm to use them again. They're absolutely beautiful. For the final look, I used Refined in my crease. Now, this is a very, very light color, and I would say that it is actually a matte highlight in my world. Depending on your skin tone, like the depth of your skin tone, this is going to go one of two ways for you. You may even be able to use it to like set your eye primer or something like that. So I took Vogue and I placed this in the outer corner and also took it up into my crease. This shade right here is my favorite matte shade in the palette. I am again wearing this today. I just think it is like the perfect color depth for me to like bring some structure back into an eye after it's all been blanked out. It, you know, works beautifully in the crease, in the outer corner. I can see myself hitting pan on an eyeshadow like this. Formula is stunning, blends beautifully, just everything. Mwah, chef's kiss, absolutely love it. In the inner corner, Delicate. So this again is similar to the previous iridescent formulas in this particular column of the palette that we've looked at, but it doesn't have a shift to it and it doesn't really have a base color. What it does have is like mega silver sparkle and light reflect. This shade caught me by surprise and I have to admit I struggled with it. So let's get into it. This is Grace. This is a black sparkly shade, and what I didn't realize when I applied this, because I didn't actually swatch, like finger swatch any of these shades before I used the palette. I went in completely blind. What I didn't realize is that this shade, it's kind of a cream. This color has a lot of adhesion built into it. So when you apply this, it's not going to apply like the other shimmery shades in the palette. It is going to adhere like you are applying a cream eyeshadow, and that also makes it quite difficult to blend. So when I was doing this look, I didn't realize that, and I have to admit I struggled to get this looking how I wanted it on the eye. Once I realized that it had that kind of creamy formula to it, I was like, oh shit. I would have used it in a different way. I would have used that as the liner, and I think it would make a sensational liner, but it was on at this point. So I just did a lot of blending. But if you are going into this palette blind, heed my warning. This applies like a cream eyeshadow. And of course, finally, I used the shade Chic as my liner. This again, like beautiful, intense, black, rich pigment. What can I say? I mean, these eyeshadows from Glaminatrix are really, really beautiful. Like they're not gonna let you down with like wishy-washy, shitty black pigment. I feel like we've seen so many bad black matte eyeshadows in our lives, you know, for the most part. Whenever I saw them in a palette, I was like, it's gonna be junk. And a lot of them were. It was actually quite rare for them to have really like rich pigmentation and you know, blend on the eye really well and all of that jazz. But yeah, no, that's like pitch black. To finish this look, I did, you know, all of the standard stuff, mascara, tight lining, all that jazz. I just put Vogue on the lower lash line because I was scared of Grace. I wasn't sure that if I put that on my lower lash line that I could genuinely make it work because my eyes are quite small. If I'm putting like too much black, they tend to get really beady. So I went with Vogue, which was a safe shade for me. Absolutely beautiful. I love that formula so much. That shade, everything about it is like the peak of perfection for me. Okay, while I get these swatches off my arm, look at that pigment, it's crazy. Just look at that. Let's have a chat about my thoughts on the palette. So formula wise, as a whole, I think the palette is fantastic. There was nothing in there that I would consider a dud shade, like it didn't blend well or it had crappy pigmentation or anything like that. That doesn't exist in the palette. Some of the sparkly shades, specifically on this side here, there can be a tiny little bit of like the sparkle fallout. So if that bothers you, I would just say, you know, do your eyes first or apply it with the appropriate tool to prevent that. In terms of the color story, for complete honesty, this is not something that I would typically purchase and use regularly in my makeup routine. As I said, I'm not a big fan of like greens and blues, so it limits me a little bit. I do love a cool toned brown though, and there are some really pretty ones in there. These stunning iridescent and shimmery shades, the sparkle, the colors chosen, all usable for me. This one, keeping in mind, it's black. I would probably only ever use it as a liner, but I think that the formula really lends itself to that because it's got that really emollient finish to it. I think if you love greens and blues and you love those like really classic greens and blues, you would enjoy this palette, especially if you also loved cool toned like brown shades. This would be a massive winner. I know there's going to be a lot of people who love this color story. I just typically go for more neutral or warmer shades when it comes to colors at least, or if I'm going for a cool toned color, I tend to like look into the purple realm because I just think it works better with my coloring. But there are a lot of like, I mean, these look blue and green, but I mean, if we shift them, they start to get into that pinky purple realm. So there's a lot in this palette that is quite usable for me. When I pick it up again, and I will, because I really think their formula is beautiful, and this damn Vogue shade is just like, if you told me that I could only keep one matte eyeshadow in like for the rest of my life, I would just keep that. So I will pick this palette up just to use that shade and happily pair it with like anything here that is sparkly and pretty, which is what I've been doing for the last couple of days. It's Vogue and a sparkly shade. That's it. It's all I need in my life. Happy. So if you like the color story and you're interested in it, I say go for it. It's a yes from me. Let's have a chat about these eyeshadow brushes. So as I said, it's an 8-piece brush set. You get 8 brushes and a makeup bag. This is a little expensive if you ask me. I personally feel that it's expensive. It's $120 for the set. They do have a note on their website that says if you add a brush set to your cart with any palette worth over 80 Australian dollars, you will receive $10 off your brush set. I do still feel that it's quite expensive. Now, I can understand potentially why they have priced it at the point that they have, because these handles are definitely like, they're fancy. They are fancy custom handles. Also, just to mention, each brush will come in like a little plastic slip like so to keep it safe. Taking a close-up look, you can see that they have a wooden handle with this really nice like indent here. They feel lovely to hold. On the end, you have a pointed tip that just, they feel like, it feels like they gave a shit when they designed these. Like they wanted them to feel a little bit luxe. They don't have a lot of weight to them. They do have a rose gold ferrule, and hopefully this is the ferrule if you're not sure what I'm talking about. And hopefully you can see, but they do have their little like Glaminatrix logo etched on there or engraved on there. I can't see it on my viewfinder, but hopefully you guys can catch it there. I'm going to go through each brush just as they're numbered. So this is the O1 brush. It's a standard like fluffy blending brush. These are so soft. Okay, they are synthetic brushes, so that does mean that they are cruelty free and vegan. Sometimes with synthetic brushes you can get scratchy ones and you can get soft ones. These are super soft. These feel just as nice as some of my like natural hair brushes, like my squirrel natural hair brushes, which is like beautiful, just beautiful and soft. They're really nicely cut. They look of good quality. And of course, it's a like great all-rounder brush. You can't bring out an eye brush set and not have something like this. This is the O2 brush. So this is a medium, like fluffy blender. Actually, let's compare the sizes of these just so you can see them there. So for the larger one, I would typically use this like in my crease to sort of diffuse whatever color I'm using in my crease, and then I would use the smaller shade, the smaller brush to go in and do like my outer corner and like, you know, keep the color a little bit more compact. I might take a tiny bit of it into my crease. Again, I feel like you can't have an eye brush set without having like, you know, a medium detailing blending brush. This one here is the O3. So this is like an eyeshadow packing brush, standard size. Again, very soft. It does have like good density, but to be fair, like what I have been doing with this is, you know, packing on the shimmery shades over my lid and then using it to sort of blend the edges of that shimmery shade into my crease color. And there's good movement there, so you can do that without it being you know, like sort of diminishing all of the sparkliness and just sweeping it off your face. I am going to skip to the O5 brush because this is like your detail eyeshadow brush, and I want to compare the sizes of them. So I love to use these brushes for if I'm putting like eyeshadow on my inner corner. Also great for blending, you know, two shimmery shades together. But you can also use a brush like this along your lower lash line and pretty much anywhere in a look. Again, I feel like these are staple eyeshadow brushes in an eye brush set. Like it just, if you don't have these, then what are you even doing with your life? This is the EO4. It is a standard sized pencil brush. This is kind of the size that you would find, you know, if you're buying a pencil brush. Like this is probably what it's going to look like. Not too big, not too small, all that jazz. Again, good for detail work, really good for like smudging colors along your lower lash line. Again, I'm jumping ahead. This one here is the EO8, and when I opened up this brush set and I was looking at the cuts of the brushes, this is the one that caught my eye as being the most unique that I saw in the set. So they're calling it a small rounded blending brush, perfect for blending out edges with fine detail, and I would agree with that. Now if we compare it to the pencil brush, you can see that it kind of looks like rather than, you know, having a pointed tip, it's got a rounded tip, so it looks a little bit more like a here we go. That's the EO2. So it looks a little bit more like a mini blending brush, but on a really small scale. When we get into the realm of like small detail blending brushes, we start to typically see stuff that looks a bit more like this, where they're skinny and long and, you know, they've got their blendy bits going on. We don't typically see stuff that looks a bit more pencil brush-esque. So this is kind of like a hybrid between a mini blending brush and a pencil brush. And that's kind of cool. I quite like this. I'm sure there are things on the market like this, but it's not a super common brush cut that you see. So I really like that they have done something a little bit different, a little bit, you know, it's not sort of run-of-the-mill normal brush cut that you see in an eye brush set. And then the last two, we have the EO6, which is the angled eyeshadow, angled liner brush. Good for brows, good for applying like gel liners or liquid liners, as I mentioned. I do think personally for me, as I mentioned at the start before we sort of went over the demos, angled brushes like this work best when they have product in them that can help to sort of pinch the hairs together and give you that nice razor line. Whereas if you're using it with a dry product, you are going to get a bit more of a diffused line. So that's something to keep in mind. You could, because it's synthetic, you could 100% use this damp. So, you know, do with that information as you will. And then we have this one. This is the EO7. So it's called a smaller fluffy brush that is perfect for gently blending shades into the crease with precision, creating a soft diffused look. So this is a very thin brush, as you can see at the base of the ferrule where the bristles meet the ferrule. It's very thin, and then it like fans out into this very like soft diffused tip. It's not a tip, she's kind of like she's a bit of an upside down triangle. These sort of brushes are really good for doing like diffused looks, and the bigger the brush, the more diffusion you get. If we compare it to the blending brushes in the kit, that is the comparison of the shades there. So this, I really like these brushes. If you do, like, let's say you take big blending brush number 1 and you put something in your crease and you blend it out, and then you take a smaller blending brush and you pop something in your outer corner and you're blending it in, and then you need to sort of, you might have somewhere where things haven't, you know, blended together perfectly. You want to pick up a little bit of color and blend them together. That's where a brush like this comes in handy, because it's going to pick up a little bit of product, because the brushes, the bristles, I'm struggling, the baby brain, I'm like, come on, you can do this. This is your thing. You love brushes. Keep it together, Hailey. The bristles, the hair fibers are more dispersed at the tip where it's going to pick up product. So you're not going to pick up as much product as you would with a brush like these two, which are a bit more dense, and then you can use that to sort of diffuse the two colors together. So beautiful. I think overall the like the brushes that are in the set are staple brushes. Like, you have to have them in an eye brush set. It makes sense. I love that they included this little guy here, which is a really interesting fun brush, and I look forward to using it more. The hair fibers feel lovely, beautiful and soft. When you're using synthetic brushes, or, you know, some synthetic brushes can feel scratchy and crappy. But these feel lovely. I think the craftsmanship of the handles is really beautiful. I will mention that some of the printing, so each brush says Glaminatrix on the handle, and then it has the brush number printed on there as well. Some of them aren't printed perfectly. Like the EO4 on mine, it looks like it says EOD. So there are some very minor printing issues there. I've had some printing issues on some of my Hakuhodo brushes. So, you know, I'm not, for me, that it's not like a big deal, but also I feel like I need to mention it, because when you're selling something for $120, like if you're looking at this and you're like, oh, I really want that brush set, and you're considering spending $120 on it or buying a palette and getting it for $110, like, I want to tell you my honest experience with it. This was obviously sent to me by Glaminatrix, and I'm really grateful for that. And it's never nice to say anything even slightly negative about something when it was given to you for free. But it's really important to like find the balance of praise where praise is due and being honest with the people that are watching my videos so that I don't lose my integrity over this. So what I will say is I think structurally and like everything that's going on with the brushes, I think is really, really nice. They're beautifully cut and neatly cut as well. Some printing issues with the like gold printing. If that's going to be a big bother to you, then, you know, that's something to keep in mind. I gasped when I saw the handles. I was like, no way. Like, they are beautiful. They feel luxe. I would say that I would prefer a little bit of like weighting in the ferrule area, which I think is something that you get from like, I mean, we're talking about the fanciest of fancy brushes. So, you know, that's just a personal preference for me. But I do think that they are lovely brushes and I will absolutely use them. The handles are stunning. They feel like artists' tools. Oh, and the bag. Let's not forget the bag before I wrap this up. It is a, like, I'd say they call it a vegan leather. Like it's a PU, wait, let me find the, here it is. Includes a luxe brown PU leather storage bag. So it's like faux leather. It has a little like rose gold zip bit. And it has the Glaminatrix Cosmetics name and logo on there in rose gold as well. And of course the brushes do fit in there perfectly and they're not, you know, they're not shoved right up against the like the top of the bag, so they won't mush your bristles if you're traveling with them, and there is room for more. So that's it. That's my thoughts on the new Glaminatrix Cosmetics Timeless Tones palette and brush set. I am going to continue to enjoy these. I'm not gonna lie, when I saw that I had a package coming from Glaminatrix Cosmetics, I thought it was gonna be the Tones of Turd palette from the, I don't know if they're actually calling it that, from the April Fool's Day like post. Apparently they're bringing it out, so that's what I was expecting. So when I opened the package and I saw this, I was like, what? That is not what I was expecting. A big surprise, but I've had a lot of fun trying these out. So obviously big thank you to Glaminatrix Cosmetics for sending me these. I really appreciate it, and I appreciate you guys for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed it. Feel free to leave your comments down below and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye.